Fran and I realized long ago that if we sit around and dream about what could be, nothing's ever going to happen. For dreams to turn into reality, one must get off their butt and just go for it. Africa has always been on our list of places to visit. And it was our plan to do so back in 2008 when the global financial meltdown forced us to put that dream on the back burner. But now things have turned around, and in October 2013, we cashed in some of our retirement nest egg and made the dream a reality. Our journey begins at our home in Costa Rica, followed by an overnight stay in New York City. We follow that up with a grueling 15-hour transatlantic flight landing us in Johannesburg, South Africa, some 28 hours after we left home. Once in country, we will head to the Arathusa Game Reserve near Kruger National Park, then off for a few days to Victoria Falls in Zambia. Finally, we're going to experience 2 more game reserves in Botswana, Elephant Valley Lodge, and finally, Kakanaka. The final leg of our trip takes us by single-engine plane from Kakanaka to the coastal city of Port Elizabeth, once again by way of Johannesburg. Here we embark on a self-guided 8-day driving tour de force of South Africa's incredible garden route. Our final days take us to Cape Town, a city rich in luxury and steeped in history. All in all, we will have traveled over 25,000 miles in exactly 3 weeks. So please, sit back and enjoy the sights and sounds of Southern Africa as seen through the eyes of boomers offshore. After months of planning, coupled with several postponements, Franny and I are off on our vacation of a lifetime. 3 weeks on safari in the heart of South Africa. Because we're going to be traveling within Africa by light plane, we were restricted to how much stuff we were allowed to bring with us. 20 kilos, or 44 pounds per person, was it. And that included all my electronics. Check it out, 2 small duffels and 2 backpacks. That's it for 3 weeks on the road.
Well, good morning. I'm sure I look a little tired and a little frazzled right now. Not really as much frazzled as I think I'm just tired, and we're only halfway through the leg here. We are in JFK Airport waiting for our South African Air flight to Johannesburg. Long flight, 15 hours. I think I'll just sleep most of the time. I've got a couple books on tape, and Andy says they've got a bunch of movies we can watch. So the adventure is beginning. We're going to be doing our flight in the next hour. We'll check back on the plane, I'm sure. This is going to be a very long trip for me. Not for him, for me. He hasn't sat still for 2 minutes. He's jerking around, he's playing with his computer, he's taking a walk, he's had 5 bottles of wine so far. I mean, this is going to be hell.
Our flight from JFK to Johannesburg lasted just under 15 hours. I took my sleeping meds just like the doctor ordered, but even 15 milligrams of Versed wouldn't knock my sorry ass out. Even Fran, who can sleep anywhere, didn't get any sleep. Well, so much for the comforts of flying coach. We arrived at our hotel about 9 a.m., but were told that our room would not be ready for about 4 hours. Okay, well, so much for early check-in. We had no choice other than to camp out on a shabby couch in the lobby. About 1 p.m. we finally got our room key, but by this time both of us were beginning to speak incoherently. We managed to grab a little shut-eye before heading out for some dinner.
I thought we were in Johannesburg, South Africa. I think the plane took us to the wrong place. This place reminds me of Caesar's Palace in Las Vegas. This is our hotel we're staying at. Has a little, I guess, a little mall here that has a casino and some other things. So we're going to walk around a little bit, but you would swear you're in Vegas.
We're at the Tribes Restaurant right now in Johannesburg. Tribes Restaurant features authentic African game food. And tonight we're going to be having things like impala, kudu, ostrich, and some other things that most of my friends out there who are vegetarians won't like to have. So we decided to sit back, have a nice bottle of red wine, eat some dinner, and then probably retire back to the room because we have to fly out tomorrow for Kruger National Park, going to Hoedspruit Airport. So that's about it. Until dinner. Ciao.
Good morning. Today is Monday morning. This is the morning where the adventure begins. Everything behind us was like recouping from a 15-hour flight, but today is the day. We're going to be heading off to the airport in another 15 minutes or so, catch a plane, and a small little commuter plane, and then we're going to be at the Kruger Park. This is so exciting. So safari time this afternoon.
And I don't know what's going to happen. My body clock has got to go ahead and synchronize somehow. But up until this point, it ain't synchronized. So I'm just going to muddle through and see what happens. But we'll keep you posted. Next stop, Arathusa Park, up in the Kruger National Park area. We arrived at the Johannesburg airport with plenty of time to spare. I was even able to enjoy a nice, relaxing cup of really good African coffee. After boarding our twin-engine commuter plane, Fran and I settled in for the short 65-minute trip north to the East Gate Airport, the official gateway to the Kruger National Park area. The airport was not much to look at, but it really was efficient. Our bags were quickly unloaded and delivered to us directly in front of the airport. Our driver was waiting for us, and after collecting our bags, we set off for the 2-hour-plus overland drive to the Arathusa Lodge, deep in the Sabi Sands Game Reserve. Growing up as a kid, the sum total of my knowledge of Africa was what I had gleaned on early field trips to the zoo and watching old Tarzan movies. But now Fran and I have the chance to see and experience African life as it really is, up close and personal. The road trip was a fantastic introduction into our upcoming wildlife adventure. Our driver, who was also a licensed travel guide, began almost immediately telling us about the area, its people, and the local wildlife. He answered every question we threw at him, and even some of the ones that may be construed as a little politically sensitive. As the quality of our road turned from awesome to downright nasty, our guide kept apologizing for the roughness of the ride. But we told him, don't sweat it. We were from Costa Rica, and we know shitty roads firsthand. What made this trip so interesting is that you never know what lies around the next corner. Heck, it might even be a couple of zebras having a late afternoon snack. One thing did jump out at us during our drive. Poverty is rampant, and water is like gold, an extremely rare commodity. With much of the area undeveloped, the locals have to line up at the community water spigots located every couple of miles. Here, they'll fill their plastic jugs and cart them home, just to repeat the same process, day after day after day. Over the course of this vacation, we will be visiting 3 different game reserves, one in South Africa and 2 in Botswana. While each place offers essentially the same thing, each of the camps in their own right were different. While all game camps provided the same basic services, the only significant difference was in the degree to which these services were delivered. In every case, we found our choice of venues to be excellent and the staff that worked there extremely knowledgeable and attentive. And to that, we offer a huge tip of the hat to our tour planning company, Rhino Africa. Well, before we realized it, we were at our first of 3 safari camps. Time to settle in and really get immersed.
Good day, Andy. Welcome at Arethusa Safari Lodge. My name is Jacques. This is my friend Christopher. Yep. At Arethusa we work in teams, so me and Chris will be working together for the time that you're here. We've been having fantastic sightings the last couple of days. We really have. It's been absolutely phenomenal. The reception staff will take you down to your room. We're having lunch at 2, and then about 3:30 we'll have high tea and we'll come and meet you and discuss the drive. From there we'll go out. Like I said, we had a good drive this morning, and we really hope to follow up on what we had this morning. Maybe try and get one of the big cats in the evening when they become a little bit more active. But morning drive, we wake you up 5 o'clock, and then 5:30 we go out on drive again. Morning drives are usually a little bit more quiet because we have to work quite hard. But you'll see the evening drives when we go out now are actually quite spectacular. So.
Arethusa is located in the northern region of South Africa, directly adjacent to Kruger National Park. Because Kruger has no fences, animals are free to roam between all adjacent game reserves, public and private. We spent 3 days at Arethusa and managed to get in 6 solid game drives. For the morning drives, we're awakened at 5 a.m., leaving us just enough time to brush our teeth, splash some water on our face, and suck down a fast cup of coffee. By 5:30, we were all loaded onto our Toyota Land Cruisers and heading out the gate. Of the 3 camps we visited, Arethusa was the only one that uses both a tracker and a guide. Trackers sit in special seats located in the front of the vehicle, just above the hood, and affords them maximum visibility. Through the use of simple hand and head gestures, trackers communicate instructions to the guide so as to know where certain animals have been and where they may be heading. Earlier in the day, Jacques was tracking a pack of wild dogs that were on the hunt. The spotting of wild dogs is a very rare occurrence in the Sabi Sand. These animals, while similar in appearance to domestic dogs, are very different, just as is the North American wolf is different from the dogs we know. African wild dogs are a favorite target food for the lion and hyena, but the less than 6,000 animals that still remain have far more to fear from man than any other natural predator. Much to Jacques' surprise, we came across the same pack of dogs he was tracking in the morning. Apparently, they're still in search of food. We tracked these incredible hunters as they moved with seemingly military-style precision for nearly half an hour. Their search pattern began to widen, indicating that they may have spotted something. sure enough, peering through the bush, we saw what the dogs saw, a small herd of impala. In a flash, the dogs took off in chase. They were so fast that if you blinked, you missed it. Well, about 20 minutes later, we found the pack and they were successful. Tonight, the dogs are going to sleep with their bellies full. As the sun began to set, the temperatures began to drop. By sunset, it was time to don our jackets once again.
Tell me, how long have you been doing this?
I've been trekking for 3 years and 8 months now.
Oh, does it ever get tiring, boring?
No.
Have you ever gone out and never seen anything?
Yeah, we see only impalas. Like when it's raining, yeah, we see nothing.
Oh, so then you're kind of bored or disappointed.
Yeah, disappointed.
But most of the time it's wonderful.
Yeah, most of the time we see good things.
Well, good.
Yeah.
We're having a great time. Thank you. This morning was amazing with these wild dogs. It was incredible. It really was. And now today we saw elephants, we saw giraffes. It's something. It's hard to explain. But now we're having a glass of wine as the sun's going down, and we'll zoom around a little bit more and then head back to the lodge, get freshened up for dinner. But man, they're feeding you all the time. I don't know if I need to eat again. But today has been another amazing day.
On our first couple of game drives, it seems every time we spotted anything with 4 legs, we got totally stoked. It didn't matter what it was. Our heads were spinning back and forth so much I think we were beginning to suffer from a mild case of whiplash. Our first 3 days in the bush really opened our eyes to what Africa life is all about. While organized hunting has just about been eliminated, poaching still exists. But thanks to the dedicated service of folks like Jacques and Chris and their attention to detail, poaching seems to be on the decline. Man and his infernal vehicles are now accepted by the animals as part of the natural environment, so long as they play by the rules. To the animals, a Land Cruiser filled with people taking pictures poses no threat. But stand up in the vehicle, make loud noises, or worse, get out of the vehicle to get a better picture, and you will most likely wind up the main course for some animal's next meal. Nighttime game drives seem to be a much more intimate experience than those of the early morning. Combine the consummate darkness of a cloudless, moonless night with the light of a billion stars, and you have the perfect mixture for tracking wild animals. Our guide slowly maneuvers our vehicle over roads illuminated only by the high-intensity light beam aimed by our tracker. It didn't take too long until we came upon a small pride of lions. Their evening quest for food had just begun. Jacques was pointing out to us that Mama was most likely teaching her 2 young sons the art of hunting. And what seemed even more perplexing was that the lions seemed undeterred by our invasive, high-intensity light. We followed them for some time on their nocturnal quest, and then we learned that food was not the only thing on the minds of these massive predators. Well, the other females right here. The members, the male and 2 female over here this morning. The following morning, we returned to the spot where we had left our little family in training. It was obvious to all of us that Mama and the kids got first dibs on what looked like a little buffalo calf. Papa stopped by later that morning for a little breakfast and some quiet time. As Fran said earlier, the food seemed to be never ending. Not only was the quality of the food awesome, but so was the atmosphere. Before dinner, there were cocktails at the bar, where we reminisced about the day's excitement, only to be followed by some of the most incredible food, all focusing on local game. Since the Arethusa retreat was without barrier fences, an armed guide had to escort us back to our bungalow at night. You never know what might be lurking behind the next bush. Now it's time for a good night's sleep because we get to do this all over again tomorrow. What an incredible surprise. We just got finished with our last day of touring, and it was time for breakfast. So it's about 8 o'clock in the morning right now, and all of a sudden they said, hey, surprise, it's a bush breakfast. They went ahead and brought tables, chairs, all of our breakfast food and coffee, you name it, down here in the middle of the plains. So we're going to have a great bush breakfast before we go ahead and jump on our plane and get the heck out of here.
This tastes really good. I don't know if it tastes good because I'm hungry or it tastes good because we're sitting out here. But it is really good.
When we were not out on morning and evening game drives, the downtime is ours to do with as we please. Some folks sleep, others read books, and some just relax by the pool. Since Fran and I have a difficult time relaxing, we decided to engage the services of a local tour guide. We hired Roy, who, by the way, also works for Arethusa, but had the day off. We hired him to show us around the area for a few hours. We wanted to see what life was like outside the touristy environment of our safari lodge. We're in the little town of Utah, which is located just outside the park. And we stopped off at a local high school, which is grades 8 through 12. We're going to cruise around the high school a little bit, and I think even have a chance to meet one of the teachers. So this is a really cool opportunity to understand what life other than the game, living on a game reserve, is like in Africa. By our standards, the school looked poor and substandard. There were no computers or any of the physical amenities our kids enjoy. But the kids were happy and getting a good basic education, even being taught how to grow their own food in an area that water is more scarce than gasoline. Today was the last day of school before a holiday break, and the kids were getting ready for a celebration. Fran got totally freaked out when she was introduced to a bunch of kids who were preparing freshly killed chickens for that afternoon's feast.
Oh man! Oh yuck!
While the girls were knee-deep in dead chickens, the boys were doing what boys do, horsing around while the girls did all the work.
You guys are crazy. Okay? You guys are crazy.
As we started to drive away from the school, Roy invited us to meet his wife and his kids at their home in the nearby village of Utah. How could we pass up that opportunity? The difference in culture is absolutely amazing. Roy, our driver, is now taking us over to his house, a house that it's taken him 7 years to build. It's incredible the process they go through. He buys the land and he builds a little bit at a time. He may build one room, then put a little bit of roof on there, come back again a few months later, or maybe even a year later after he's earned more money to go ahead and build onto the house. But what we're going to do right now is take a tour of Roy's house and have a chance to see what he's built over the last 7 years. Roy designed and built this house with his own bare hands. It has taken him 7 years to get where he is today and figures it'll be several more years until the house is complete. Housing and construction standards are not what we as Westerners would embrace. But when compared to many of the other houses in the area, Roy and his family are living pretty high off the hog, so to speak. It seems a bit odd that the kitchen area was not used to prepare food, but one of the bedrooms was.
Did you tend to eat?
Yes, this one. You can taste if you want.
It is here where Roy introduced us to what his family ate pretty much all the time. Their diet was pretty basic. Some cabbage, a bit of homegrown protein, and a very thick porridge made from cornmeal. Roy asked us if we'd like to test the food. While I'm sure he meant taste, I was apprehensive, anticipating some sort of intestinal backlash. But Franny threw caution to the wind and said,
Sure, let's go for it.
Oh, you do?
the only required utensils were those 5 appendages we call fingers.
Oh, that's pretty good. You have to try it. Good.
Pretty good.
And this is just regular beef, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So if you come here in January, February, you can drink a traditional Marula beers. That is very nice.
Oh.
Very, very nice. Must just ask Jack.
As we continued on our room-to-room tour of the house, one thing became painfully obvious. There was no running water in the house. All the water that would be used for drinking and bathing was collected in plastic jugs from the community tap several hundred meters away and hand-carried to the house on a daily basis.
It's a little bit sour, right?
Little bit.
Yes.
But I noticed the hotel was a little sour too.
Yes.
Yeah. Nice.
And as for the basics, you guessed it, a hole in the ground.
I think we need one of those. I wouldn't have to yell at you for not flushing.
But here's the paradox. While water had to be carted in from a half-mile away and toilet facilities required a trip to the backyard, satellites orbiting high above the earth beamed down the latest in African entertainment. Before heading back to our local safari camp, we had to stop at a local bodega that was selling local art and cold beer. Since Fran is a sucker for jewelry and I was really thirsty, this was a win-win situation.
That's different.
There you go.
Okay, that one.
Yes,
So it's 130 grand. Oh, 8-0 for both. Okay. Traveling over land in Africa is not only time-consuming, but is murder on one's lower back and kidneys. Had we driven from Arethusa to Victoria Falls, the trip would have taken nearly 24 hours. But by plane, it took a mere 2 hours. The first leg put us on a small 7-seat Cessna Caravan for the 30-minute flight from our gravel airstrip to Kruger Airport. We then boarded a real jet for the 100-minute flight to Livingstone Airport in Zambia.
All right. Well, we've made it to Livingston, Zambia.
What I was not prepared for was Zambia's complete lack of efficiency in clearing immigration. While all 4 lines were clearly marked, we followed the signs and stood in the line which required us to purchase visas. But after an hour on that stagnant line, we learned it didn't matter what line you stood in, all the lines were selling visas. Needless to say, we jumped into the short line and we cleared immigration in about 15 minutes. Live and learn.
Okay, we made it. An hour and 45 minutes through immigration.
After about a 10-minute ride from the airport, the Zambezi Sun Resort welcomed us with open arms and a cocktail.
Now we're at the Zambezi Sun. This is a resorty place. There's nothing we're going to do as safaris or anything like that. Although Andy's going to have a wild adventure. He's going to do some whitewater rafting. I'm going to do some old lady tour of the village. We're only here 2 nights and then we're off to another wildlife preserve where we'll be out on safari again. But I am kind of surprised. When we first drove up, it is hoity-toity, big hoity-toity. But the room is nothing to look at. I mean, it's nice, but it doesn't live up to what you drive up to. So this is more to kind of relax a little bit, let him have his adrenaline rush for whitewater rafting. I hope he makes it out alive because I don't have life insurance on him. So I really need him around. My Spanish skills are pretty bad. So, and then I'll do an old lady tour, and the next day we'll just, then we're out of here. I mean, it's going to be quick.
You can't visit southern Africa without seeing Victoria Falls, one of the original 7 natural wonders of the world. Its enormous single sheet of falling water creates clouds of mist that can be seen over 1,000 feet into the air and can be seen from 40 to 50 miles away. That's what I knew of Victoria Falls, and that's what I wanted to see. But unfortunately, I forgot about October and the dry season. So instead of seeing mega torrents of water cascading over the edge of the gorge, we saw this. Yeah, it was kind of a disappointment, but we soon got over it.
I am right now at Victoria Falls. I could see how magnificent this place is during rainy season. Unfortunately, we're here when it's very dry right now. So there's only like one little fall coming down, but this place must be, as I said earlier, magnificent during the rainy season when it's just gushing water like Niagara Falls. So let's keep on trekking and see what else we can find.
But wait a second. Just as soon as Fran said that it was kind of crappy over here, we turned the corner, and there through the big gap is tons and tons of water pouring and cascading over the sides. Having rafted some of the most challenging rivers in the United States, Canada, and Costa Rica, getting a chance to experience one of the top 3 rivers in the world was a chance I was not about to pass up. While Fran took off on her old lady tour of a local village, my plans were a bit more engaging. Today, I take on the massive torrents of the Great Zambezi River. This message goes out to all my buddies in the band of rafters. I'm going to tell you this right now. This was the baddest I have ever been on. That is a fact, Jack. It makes Class 5 golly seem like a run. This kicked ass.
It's Sunday morning, October 13. My body is racked with pain and I'm physically exhausted. I thought the Aleve that I'd been popping since last evening would make me forget about the physical abuse I endured just 24 hours before, but no such luck. We're on our way to Botswana and the Elephant Valley Lodge, located in the Chobe National Park. No airplanes this time, we're going by van. While the drive to Chobe was relatively unremarkable, crossing the border was anything but. For several miles leading up to the border were a seemingly endless line of over-the-road trucks. As we approached, our driver began to weave precariously between them. Somehow, he managed to find a place to park almost in front of the passport control office. Mission accomplished. Passport control was a breeze, although I did get busted shooting some video at the border. But the real fun came when I needed to exchange my Zambian kwacha for Botswanan pulas. This was my third country and third set of currency. This is getting to be a real pain.
Enjoy the trip.
We will.
Thank you. Thank you.
The border that divides Zambia and Botswana was a 400-meter wide stretch of the Zambezi River. Only one problem: there was no bridge. Instead, pontoon boats ferried people and vehicles across the narrow stretch of water, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. In most cases, it takes between 5 and 10 days for a truck to get from one side to the other. Geez, and I thought Costa Rica was inefficient. Our travel agent knew of this mess and planned accordingly. They arranged for a small passenger boat to meet us in Zambia and take us across to the Botswana shore. There, another van would meet us and take us the remaining way to our lodge. Bravo again, Rhino Africa. Our last 5 days in the bush will be split between two similar Botswanian game reserves, Elephant Valley Lodge and Kakanaka. This area also boasts the largest elephant population anywhere in Africa. So if you're ready, let's get wild. We loved hanging out and watching the elephants. Most of the time, they pretty much ignored us and just went on their merry way. I guess to them, the size and shape of our land cruisers may have looked just like another elephant. The baby elephants just seemed to put huge smiles on our faces. Occasionally, one would break away from Mama and come a little closer to our vehicle. Not really sure what to make of us, the youngster just seemed to want to show off a bit. But Mama always kept a watchful eye, making sure that little Bambino did not become food for a hungry cat or a pack of hyenas. I was amazed at the damage these animals inflicted onto the land. In their zeal to satisfy their ravenous appetites, a herd of elephant can enter an area and, using their huge heads, knock down trees so as to ravage the root system for food. By nature, neither I nor Fran are really cat lovers. But there's something about a big cat that just makes me want to get closer. While they look so docile and lovable, I know that if I were to do something really stupid, I would probably become their next meal. And there's not a damn thing I could do about it. Respect is the key word. If we respect them and their space, they will respect us. Seeing a lion or a leopard on the hunt for food or enjoying the reward from a fresh kill makes me feel pretty good. It tells me that the circle of life continues without man intervening and screwing something up. The three camps we visited all shared one thing in common. We were able to experience the opportunity of a lifetime and see these beautiful animals living the way nature had intended. I don't think I can ever visit a zoo again, nor will I ever take my grandkids to visit a zoo. For me, zoos are nothing more than animal prisons. Animals should be free to live their lives in peace and tranquility without the fear of man decimating their population in order to satisfy their financial greed. Franny and I are just very grateful that we were able to have this experience before it was too late. If you think that this vacation is over, you better think again. With our bush memories now behind us, Franny and I are headed over to the Indian Ocean coast, where we're going to be renting a car and cruising the garden route. Hey, welcome to the Kakanaka International Airport. This is where we're beginning our third and final leg of our African adventure. We're just waiting on our shuttle plane to arrive, which hopefully will take us from this godforsaken excuse of an airport to Port Elizabeth, South Africa, a coastal city on the Indian Ocean. Today is really going to suck, but tonight we're going to be sleeping on top of 600-count Egyptian cotton sheets in an upscale bed and breakfast with air conditioning and a well-stocked minibar. Now that's what I call pura vida.
Well, welcome. Come and see our place that we're just staying one night in Port Elizabeth. It is wow. After being in the bush for 2 weeks now, look where we get to stay. I'm feeling really special.
Our final 7 days in country will take us on a self-guided tour through some of the most spectacular scenery anywhere in South Africa and maybe the world. Our journey will take us from Port Elizabeth, south, down the Indian Ocean coast to the town of Knysna. From there, we head to the sleepy village of Hermanus to see whales and hopefully do some cage diving with great white sharks. We end up in Cape Town, the jewel of South Africa, for 4 days of sightseeing, great food, and some well-needed relaxation.
We had an awesome night's sleep. We were at the Windermere Bed and Breakfast here in, where the hell are we? Where are we at?
Port Elizabeth.
Port Elizabeth. We're in Port Elizabeth, South Africa. So now starts the journey up the garden route. We had our car delivered to us this morning. It's some kind of a Chevy thing. I really don't know what the hell it is, but it's a nice little four-seater. But as you can see, I'm driving on the wrong side of the car, on the wrong side of the road, and we'll see what happens. I'm running out of words to say. I think it's time to get going.
Back in the mid-'60s, surfer and filmmaker Bruce Brown made one of the greatest surfing movies of all time called The Endless Summer. And one of the places Bruce highlighted in his film was a place in South Africa called Cape St. Francis. And Cape St. Francis was known for the most perfect wave ever found. You could literally ride all day long on a single, perfectly shaped wave. Well, I was a kid at that time, growing up in South Florida, and surfing was my life. I just loved it, and I did everything I could to go ahead and live that lifestyle. But here I am, 63 years old, too old and too fat to surf, and now I finally realized my dream, and I am now at Cape St. Francis, South Africa, at the exact point where Bruce Brown filmed part of The Endless Summer. But I've noticed one thing. All the pristine surroundings that Bruce filmed way back then, it's all changed. It's now become rental houses and houses for ownership. The wave structure over here, the break has changed. So no longer is Cape St. Francis the perfect wave. It's got some nice waves to ride. And had I had my boogie board with me, I might be inclined to go out there and ride a few. As long as I had a wetsuit, because that water is colder than a witch's tit. What can I say? Cape St. Francis was one of my bucket dream places. I finally made it out here, and I can just mark that one off. So, Bruce, I want to thank you for the opportunity of giving me a chance to have a dream and then realize it. And now, it's on to other things. Again, Andy Brown with Boomers Offshore at Cape St. Francis, South Africa. But just 24 hours into our Garden Route tour, the good luck we've been experiencing thus far took a more ominous turn. Well, things just took a wicked turn for the bad. We had a head-on collision with another car who I believe was driving on the wrong side of the road, and I think the guy's been drinking. So we're just right now, we had some motorcycle riders came by. They called for the cops, and we're waiting on the cops to show up. Fran wrenched her back pretty good. Airbags deployed, and I got banged up good, and Fran's back is hurting. So things have definitely taken a bad turn for us right now. Ironically, we took the advice of our innkeeper, and we took a back road, which was to be scenic and beautiful, and it was up until the time we ran into this guy. So we're just waiting and see what happens. We were coming up over the hill, hugging mostly the center portion of the road. The other car came around, and he too was in the center of the road. I went left, he went right, and then I had to do a hard turn right, and he followed my action. And that's when he hit me. Once again, Rhino Africa came through for us. Not only were they able to book our last-minute flights to Cape Town, but they also arranged to get us picked up at the airport and were able to extend our accommodations at the fabulous Camps Bay Retreat. You know, looking at the bright side, we now have more time to have fun in beautiful Cape Town, South Africa. Cape Town is a beautiful city located at the southern tip of the African continent. It is bordered on the west and east coasts by the Atlantic and Indian Oceans respectively. Blessed with weather patterns that are quite similar to those in Southern California, I almost felt like we were visiting Laguna Beach or even San Diego. We were staying at Camps Bay Retreat, a beautiful boutique hotel located about 500 meters from the water's edge and within easy walking distance to very cool bars, restaurants, and the double-decker tour bus stop. Since we were now without wheels, we relied on city sightseeing of Cape Town to be our main source of transportation. For about $30 a day, both of us were able to go damn near anywhere we wanted to in the greater Cape Town area.
Broken 10 6 every day, just to drive to my baby. Broken 10 6 each day, 'cause I drive my baby every way. Magic Ball, Magic Ball, Magic Ball, Magic Ball.
Well, the Red Line bus seems to be doing quite well for us. We're having a great chance to go ahead and look at some of the sights here around Cape Town. But in the interim, we're looking for a nice place to kick back, have a couple of glasses of nice white wine, maybe some dinner in a couple of hours, and just walk around and see the sights in downtown Cape Town.
One of Cape Town's most popular attractions is the newly renovated wharf area, simply known as the waterfront. It is home to many restaurants, bars, museums, and is the jumping-off point for all the major tours in and around the Cape Town area. You don't necessarily have to spend a lot of money here. If you're so inclined, just kick back and watch the seals frolic in the harbor. Or take a hike through the mall for a little window shopping. Too bad I couldn't bring this new 100-inch monster TV back through customs. And what better way to celebrate a day of nothingness than to kick back with a great bottle of South African wine.
What a vida in South Africa.
Cape Town has closed many of its once traffic-congested streets and designated them as pedestrian-only walkways. Not only has it reduced congestion, but business has skyrocketed as a result. Vendors from across all of South Africa now come here and set up shop.
While we were riding around on the red bus, we saw this little shopping area. Now this is my kind of shopping. I really like this little local kind of, probably junk store stuff, but let's go check out what's over there. This is my kind of shopping.
While the tourist is the primary target, locals shop here as well. The bargains are plentiful and the quality is top-notch. Fran scored several pair of beautiful handmade earrings, while I came home with an incredible handcrafted teak box. There were 3 places we absolutely, positively had to go while we were in Cape Town. The first on our list was Robben Island, the prison that was home to Nelson Mandela for over 20 years. Next was Table Mountain, the iconic mountain plateau that overlooks Cape Town. And lastly, the Cape of Good Hope, mistakenly referred to as the southernmost point of Africa. So, let's check out Robben Island.
I'm on the ferry right now out to Robben Island. It's going to be about maybe a 15-20 minute ride. Temperatures are feeling pretty nice, maybe in the high 60s, low 70s right now, and the wind's starting to kick up just a little bit. But once we get out there, Robben Island is a prison camp, or was a prison camp, and originally it was a leper colony way back in the 1600s. But now we're going to go out there and take about a 3-hour tour and cruise around the place and look at the various cells and get some more insight into the history that is South Africa.
Never did they return, but that's where the name comes from. But Otjumato became the first recorded prisoner to Robben Island. Now the thinking was, they were indigenous clan of the Cape, they're not seafaring, if they're here, they don't need to look after them.
Years and 5 months in this prison between 1984 and 1991.
Well, we were finally able to get off the bus and explore the prison. The people who were conducting the tours within the prison were all ex-prisoners, and that did add a level of authenticity. For me, this was a boring tour, and not on my list of recommended places to go in South Africa. Okay, so Robben Island did not really float our boat when it came to interesting tourist attractions. But Table Mountain, that's a different story.
No matter where you are in the greater Cape Town area, you can see Table Mountain, the iconic flat-top mesa that looms over Africa's southern tip. There are two ways to get to the top of Table Mountain. Those who are physically fit and like to endure bodily torture can take the 2-hour-plus hike up any of the well-marked public trails to the summit. Or those of us who ooze common sense can take the 10-minute cable car ride to the top. Hey, mama didn't raise no fool. The only hassle with the cable car is the lines to the actual cable car can be quite lengthy.
Wow, this is worse than Disney World. We take lines to then take elevators to get back online. Here on a beautiful, beautiful morning. This is our last morning in Africa, and we couldn't ask for a prettier morning. Over my shoulder, you can see Robben Island, where we were the other day, the stadium we drove by, and the waterfront where we walked around, and I think I got my cool hat there. So you can see everything from here, a bird's eye view of a beautiful, beautiful country.
Having stood about an hour in line, waiting to get a ride to the top of Table Mountain, and then spending a little over an hour and 20 minutes up on top, walking around, taking all kinds of video, I think it's time to go ahead and check this thing off as a been there, done that experience. Anybody coming to South Africa, especially Cape Town, you've really got to go ahead and make an effort to come up here because the views are simply spectacular. It's a lot of fun, it's an easy walk, and there's not that many steps, so it's a cool thing to do. So that's it. Andy Brown, Boomers Offshore, coming to you from Table Mountain, South Africa. The Indian Ocean meet the cold currents of the Atlantic to form a mariner's nightmare, the Cape of Storms. Or so at least that's what we were taught in school. But in reality, and for the sake of the accuracy of this video, the true southern point resides about 90 miles to the southeast at Cape Argulis. Well, be that as it may, we're here and that's all there is to it. Perhaps the best part of seeing the Cape is getting there. We hired a private driver, which afforded us the ability to get up close and personal with the areas in which we visited. You can't do this in one of those old fart bus tours where you drive by interesting sights and are constantly in a rush to stay on someone else's schedule. The South African coastline was simply breathtaking. It reminded us a lot of California's Pacific Coast Highway. But instead of the cars causing traffic slowdowns, for us it was the wildlife. It was not an uncommon sight to peer out the window of your car and see penguins playfully walking on the beach, or even a family of wild ostriches strutting about. Our timing could not have been any better, for we were right in the middle of whale migration season. Large pods of right whales could be found frolicking just a few meters off the shore. Tourists frequently stopped their cars to take scenic pictures. These folks learned a valuable lesson. When stopped, keep your windows up and your doors locked. The South African baboon, although cute and cuddly, can, and without warning, invade your space and cause bodily injury.
They're looking for food, but they'll steal anything not nailed down. You ought to see their camera collection. Once we cleared the visitor's center, it was still another 7 or 8 miles until we hit the Cape of Good Hope. As do all tourists, we took the obligatory picture of us standing in back of the sign indicating our exact geographic location on the planet Earth. Yeah, it was one of those dorky moments, but you don't travel halfway around the world and not do it. As soon as we finished taking our picture, a load of European tourists charged off their bus and began positioning themselves for their photographic keepsake. Unfortunately, their poor tour guide was left juggling 25 cameras so he could take group photos for everybody. I guess nobody knows how to copy a file. Once you've done the sign thing, there's really not much else to do except head to the top of the point. Again, there's 2 ways of accomplishing that feat, and by now I'm sure you know which method we chose.
After a couple hundred steps, we finally made it up to the Cape Point Lighthouse. You don't get any farther out than this. We've made it up to the very tip, the edge of the hemisphere. I guess that's about as far as you can say you can go.
Cape Point and the Cape of Good Hope is a must-see stop for anybody visiting Southern Africa. Exciting and breathtaking are the 2 words that are going to stay with me forever whenever I hear the words Cape of Good Hope. Today, visitors to Cape Town enjoy a clean, well-functioning, modern metropolis. Its successes can be measured in its steadily growing economy, excellent city services infrastructure, and just drop-dead gorgeous weather. By all measurable standards, Cape Town is truly a world-class city. But it wasn't always that way. From 1944 until 1994, racial segregation was the rule of law throughout South Africa. Apartheid was master, and those of the black, Indian, and colored races were powerless over their white minority oppressors. For nearly 50 years, non-whites were required to live totally separate lifestyles. It was illegal to marry, share toilets, restaurants, or even attend public sporting events. They were denied jobs and the ability to earn a decent wage. In short, they were treated like animals. But that all changed in 1990. Bowing to world pressure forced the South African white government to put an end to apartheid. Nelson Mandela was released from prison, and 4 years later he would become the first black president of the country. The memory of these dark days lives on thanks to public museums like the District 6 Museum. It is here we came face to face with some of the horrors that took place back in that day. Yes, we had our dark days of segregation, but it was nothing like the legal genocide that was practiced and perfected in South Africa. And in the 23 years since apartheid ended, life for non-whites has improved exponentially. We're in an area right now known as Boerkop, and this used to be one of the slave districts in very, very ancient Cape Town. And it's one of the areas that's known for its brightly colored homes.
This area is really quaint. I love the bright colors. It kind of reminds me I think this reminds me a lot of Granada. A little bit of Granada with all the brightly colored homes. It really is really pretty.
But with their newfound power comes responsibility, and I don't see a lot of that happening, at least not fast enough. In my short time in country, I still bore witness to the conditions that still exist in Cape Town today. While not targeting blacks and coloreds per se, shantytowns still exist because the government chooses to ignore the problem as opposed to fixing it. But for all of the government's failures, a few successes managed to eke through. Witness Langa Township, the oldest and largest of all of South Africa's black townships. For some, taking a vacation is about relaxing and getting away from the daily routine of work. For us, it's about the opportunity to see and experience new adventures. Such was our motivation for this trip to Southern Africa. It's almost impossible for me to put into words my feelings when I found myself within an arm's length of a giant bull elephant or a lion devouring its most recent kill. To experience these magnificent creatures up close and personal caused me to reflect on just how much there is to see and experience during our short time we have here on Earth. We seem to take for granted so many things, like the simple act of getting a glass of fresh, clean water when you turn on a faucet, or just flushing a toilet. It's the little things we seem to forget about. This vacation was an eye-opening, yet humbling experience for me and Fran, one that we will relive for the remainder of our lives. We hope that you enjoyed watching this video as much as we enjoyed making it. We're not sure where our next adventure is going to take us, but for certain, it will be a place that's going to break new ground for us. This has been Andy Brown with Boomers Offshore saying thanks and pura vida.
Thank you.